What's up, everybody? I pray everybody's having a good day, a good weekend, a good summertime. Hey, I hope the fathers enjoyed Father's Day, and I hope everyone enjoyed our brand new holiday, Juneteenth. Gotta get used to saying Happy Juneteenth to everybody. I was feeling kind of, it's a shame to say, I was kind of uncomfortable saying it. I think next year, I'm gonna be pretty good. I'm gonna have my t-shirts on. I'm gonna be saying Happy Juneteenth to everybody. We've been saying Happy 4th of July or Happy Independence Day. We celebrate all the other holidays. Cinco de Mayo and what is that? Slipped my mind. My birthday, Groundhog's Day. Not that many people celebrate that. But anyway, I just pray everybody enjoy their time. All right, we got a special show for you today. We're going to be talking politics. It's not a politics show, but we got to talk about politics. There's so many things that we need to know, especially as a people. There's some things that we let go over our head. We don't pay attention to. We think somebody else will take care of it. You know, let that group over there and let that group that deal with it, and we'll just they'll work it out, and we'll take advantage of them working it out. But sometimes we got to get involved ourselves to help work it out. All right, let me introduce our co-host. Where's my mouse? All right, here we go. Welcome to the stage. What's up, Dr. CB?
Hey, you know that's my song. You know I like that little beat. I like it. Hey,
all right.
everyone.
Good evening. I heard you just been running around all over town.
All day long. It's been from one thing to the other. Got some things going on with the grandkids. Got some things going on with, my friend had the ribbon cutting of her insurance company today.
Okay.
So we were at that event. It was just all over the place. Taking care of folks who are a little under the weather. It's been a busy day, but it's all right. I'm here. We're here.
Hey,
that's what we do.
Yeah. Amen. That's me too. We are. I went to Miami last week to spend some time with my dad and some family.
Right.
And my sister begged me to come to Jamaica to her wedding. I'm like, no way in the world can I get ready and go to Jamaica in less than a week. Well, Sharice and I are going to be going to the airport at 3 a.m.
Yes.
We're going to be flying to Jamaica for my first time.
Yes.
So I just said, God worked that thing out.
I was going to say, Sharice will get it done.
Man, I wasn't a believer. I was like, there's no way it's going to happen. But
oh, yeah,
I need to check in the flight and all that kind of stuff. But okay, let's go ahead and set the show up for us. And introduce the guests.
All right, so we have two amazing guests tonight. One of them is Diyonne McGraw, and Diyonne is running for a school board seat. And there's a lot of politics behind that whole school board seat and the school board seat thing, what happened with all of that. So Diyonne is one of a few of the school board members, or actually the only real candidate that has a master's degree in education and has worked in special education. It also has a lot of specialization in running her group homes and dealing with intensive behaviors. So she has a wide array of experiences, but more importantly, she has a heart for children and a heart for reform and a heart for making sure that the community is involved and engaged in moving forward. She wants, she's pushing for transparency, but more engagement and involvement of the community in this process, because for so long we have been isolated, and you think the politicians are up here doing stuff and they just tell you what's going to happen. And she and Chanae Jackson is the other guest that's joining us. Chanae is an author and is coming to us with, again, a wealth of experience. Chanae started this journey after an incident that occurred with her son. Formally started it. She's always been pushing, 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 but she moved into a situation where she has now become known as the accidental advocate. And what that means is she didn't set out to be an advocate and she didn't set out to do this work, but it's her passion, it's her calling, and she does it well. She is very much engaged in local, statewide, and national politics. She and Diyonne both serve on countless boards and committees, and they are both focused on getting spaces at the table. They want us at the table. They want us there, and they're opening doors and kicking them down, kicking them open to make sure people can walk through them and get experiences and have an opportunity to see politics through a different lens and understand that they work for us. Politicians work for us. We hire them with our votes, and then we let them off the hook. And there's not one other job you can go to where the only thing you have to do is show up, and then after that, kind of let you off the hook. So I'm not going to get in that space because you know how I get when we start talking about this kind of stuff. So I'm going to be quiet and let these ladies take it away.
Okay, well, welcome to the stage, Diyonne McGraw.
All right, Diyonne.
Chanae Jackson.
Hey, Chanae.
Good evening.
Yes.
Hey there, hi everyone.
Yes, so Chanae, I spoke with Chanae earlier, and she is in the process of going to work. It doesn't stop for her. We were in a meeting the other day, and her phone rung nonstop. I thought mine rung all the time. Hers rung all the time. So she is in her car, but she did not want to miss this opportunity to share with this audience. So welcome, Diyonne, and welcome, Chanae.
Welcome, welcome.
Hey
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah, she did not want to miss this
so
opportunity to share. She did not want to share. So, ladies, welcome. We're so excited to have you here today. And I didn't tell you this part of it. I just told you were coming. I didn't tell you that I was sitting in the co-host seat. But because if I did, I would have prepared you, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted you right here, authentic, because I need the community to hear you. I need the audiences to hear you. So I'm going to try my best not to get super hyped and just run through this. And I'm going to sit back and Joe, I'm going to try to be quiet. Go ahead.
No, you just tell. Both of them got powerful stories, but let me know where they need to start.
Well, Diyonne has an amazing story as a candidate who has won a race and been what we are considering wrongfully removed from her seat, and now is having to fight her way back with using the same politics that people try to avoid and evade to do the things that they're doing. So Diyonne's story is amazing. Chanae's story is amazing too. Chanae is really grassroots and comes from a place where she is determined to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be heard. So, I don't know. You may want to start with Diyonne. It looks like Chanae may be frozen, but you may want to start with Diyonne, and then let's talk to Chanae about advocacy and how it works. How does it start? How do you do that? So, Diyonne, you want to tell us a little bit about you and your story? Tell us, how did you get into politics?
Well, good evening again, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm excited. As she said, I've been going all day too, but that's what you do when you're running for political office, but also that's what I do as a person. I am a public servant. I know how politics work, but I am a public servant. But I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, where my pastor was the last standing witness with Dr. King. And we were always taught, in my church, you always saw your Andrew Young, John Lewis. They were always Stevie Wonder. We celebrated. We had to volunteer at the Lorraine Motel. So my pastor, it was integrated, and my mother made sure we were involved. All of my mother friends were judges and lawyers. So somebody was always running for office. And so from a child, that's how I got started. And so as I grew up, I continued that, graduating from Florida A&M University, and then moving on to Gainesville, Florida. I got here because of love. My husband, they had not had a minority teacher in 15 years over in Union County or Lake Butler. And so I turned down $42,000 a year. I had a job at 22 years of age because my husband and I have been dating since my freshman year of college. And so that's how I got to Gainesville. And when I got to Alachua County, totally different picture. And about how you advocate strongly for us as a people. And so I got involved, started serving on boards. 2005, I ran for city commission just to get my name out there, and been volunteering at Alachua County Public Schools since 1992. And then just learning the system, knowing that we needed a seat at the table because it's not that I don't care about all children, but we want to make sure all children are included. And so when it came to Black and brown children, there were a lot of exclusions, and I did not think that was fair or right. So that's why I got involved and made sure it happened. And was blessed to win in on August 18th of 2020.
Yep.
Won, served for 7.5 months. But you know, when you're making change, part of my campaign slogan was committed to serve, courage to lead. But also I did a little jingle that said it's time for a change. Diyonne McGraw can do it. And when I won, I had a lot of upset people because I was up against a 30-year system and people did not believe that I could win, but I did. And once I began serving, changes began to happen. And status quo did not like that. And so they decided to put together a scheme of questioning residency, which was not about my residency as a whole. There were 3 African Americans who had the opportunity to serve on the board, and people were truly upset with that. But of course, when they couldn't, overturn my votes, they considered us a 3-2. They went to court without my knowing and tried to overturn that. I won that portion of it, but then they wrote the governor, and our governor got involved and removed me from office. So that's kind of where we are in a nutshell. So I'm continuing to deal with my case, and I'm now in federal court. But nonetheless, I have to do what I have to do. So I have filed to run again for the school board District 2. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Awesome. That's a great story. That's a great story, Diyonne. And I know you mentioned as you were going through that story, I was happy to be there with you the night that you won. And Chanae and a lot of people were there celebrating that. And I know that you talked a little bit about your background and how you got started. I'm going to ask you in just a second a question about that, but I'm going to jump over to Chanae while we have her here, not frozen. And I'm going to ask Chanae. Chanae, can you tell us a little bit about you and how you got into advocacy? Why do you care? Why do you even care?
I think I care because of my experiences. So I actually am a native of Gainesville, one of the few that Gainesville, Florida actually has. And so I was born and raised in that community. I was one of the children that was raised in the crack era and the crack epidemic. So I was raised by my community. So I was a child. I was gifted in 2nd grade. The reason I got that opportunity is my guidance counselor worked at a church, and at a church in Gainesville, and she saw me after school and just saw in her mind just how amazing I was. So as the guidance counselor, she put forth the gifted referral in order for me to be tested for gifted, and then of course I was tested and accepted. And so I got involved as I started to have my own children and started being involved in like PTO or PTA, depending on the school that they were at, and SAC committee, which is the school advisory council. And it was there that I learned things like they were the ones responsible for curriculum. That's where kind of the decisions were made. And the people that are making those decisions didn't look like me and my children. When my oldest son, who is now almost 23, was 12 years old, he got involved with an organization over in Marion County called Students Working Against Tobacco. And we were living in Marion County at the time. And so in order for him to be a member of Students Working Against Tobacco and actually sit on a Marion County's tobacco-free partnership, his parent would have to participate with him. So I started going to those advisory council meetings with him. I started witnessing my 12-year-old go meet with House of Representatives and senators and things like that, and actually go to the state and advocate. And so what's interesting is I love history and a history buff, but it wasn't until that time that I was able to really understand the power of advocacy and actually going to talk to the people, and that they actually work for us. So they were responsible and accountable to us. And so we proceeded forward. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. I was there, became a bank manager of a bank up there. And my father got sick back in 2016, which brought me back to Gainesville. And so my oldest son at this time, and I was a senior in high school, and I had my, other child was a sophomore. My daughter was just entering middle school. And so I uprooted my family because you only got one father. And I assured my children that once they got back to Gainesville, things were going to be great because I had such a wonderful school experience despite not having my parents present.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was really stood out in Georgia where my kids were primarily schooled is identity. And so when it comes to history in Georgia, Black history is American history. So it is taught from K through 12. It is embedded and immersed in every aspect of history, but then also math. They learned about Black mathematicians and science. They learned about Black scientists, engineers and things like that. So that was the norm for us. In addition to that, Georgia was very deliberate about parent interaction in the schools. And so even with the parent school compact, they had parent liaisons. And if you didn't show up to a meeting or show up to one of the after school programs or things that they did for the students, there was a liaison that was giving you a phone call, a knocking on your door, and that was a monthly thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got back to Alachua County, what was normal because that's what you do is I started to show up at city commission meetings. I started to show up at Black on Black task force meetings. I started to show up to school board meetings. When I was in these spaces, I kept hearing the same narrative over and over. Our community is falling apart. It's our Black children, and it's the fault of the parents. And so I'm like, me knowing that not to be so, being that perspective, I started. It was about 6 months before I ever said anything. But when I started to speak up, it was, hey, I believe that I have the ability to help these parents. I came from many of the communities that you're talking about. I'm more than happy to be an ally and be collaborative with you in order to change within our community. And what I realized is when I started to speak in that manner, I was met with silence, and people were actually dumbfounded, but that I would suggest such a thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then what happened is, teachers would respond. I remember the teachers union president at the time. She stood up and she named all the reasons that teachers couldn't work with parents, and teachers don't have time to return emails, and teachers don't have time to return phone calls, and teachers don't have time for this. But then she stated, but it's the responsibility of parents. They must work with us. And so at that time, I started to work with other organizations that stated that they were doing the work. So a lot of my advocacy started in the education system. They
Mm-hmm.
had taken the school bus from one of the Black communities that was, I guess we would call them the projects. And so it was subsidized housing in order to accommodate for students that were being bused because they were in magnet programs. And so it was at that time that I really started to see that many of the things that was going on in the school system was by design. And so what happened is there was another school board candidate was running. I was assisting that candidate who happened to be another Black woman. And I realized that many of the people kept stating, well, they started what they call a whisper campaign. Well, she's an angry Black woman. She's a this. And I'm like, well, she's not angry. I'm the person that's loud and, audacious. I've never heard her raise her voice. And what was interesting is the number of people that believed what was said, even though this candidate compared to the other candidate was the perfect and the ideal candidate who actually was the person that when we started to talk about equity, she was one of the people that was pivotal in that. And so I still continued to work. I sat on a lot of county and city boards, actually even becoming the chairs of those boards, like the Parks and Recs Board, the Rape Services and Victims, Rape Prices and Victim Services Board, Alachua County Human Rights Board. And it was even in those spaces that when it came time to give an award, it might be a white guy and a Black guy, and they want to give it to the white guy, although the Black guy would have done double the work. And it was just so intriguing for me to speak up and actually just point out what the obvious was. And it wasn't that they necessarily accommodated, but I remember one time with an award, they just ended up giving it to both people. And so it was for me highlighting just how important our voices were,
Mm-hmm.
but that they were purposely being silenced. And then in June of 2018, June 13th, I'll never forget it. My oldest son again, he was 18 years old. We were in his car was not working at the time, so he was in mine. He was coming to pick me up from work. He had just left our neighborhood. We lived in a nice neighborhood. And I was on the phone with him, and he was like, "Mom, getting pulled over." So me, he's 18 years old. Oh, you absolutely had to be speeding. And
Yeah.
I gave him the talk. And that talk will put your hands on the steering wheel, remain calm, answer the questions. And at the same time, I'm fussing. You're going to pay that ticket. You're going to walk until you pay that ticket. We started to hear the officer calling and yelling at him over the intercom. So at this time, now fear has set in. We have seen endless times where people are gunned down during traffic stops, even though they've not escalated anything. And that was the reason for giving my son the talk. And so I'm telling my son, because I can hear on Bluetooth, let him know we're calling dispatch, which is communications. Let him know at this time I'm starting to get panicked because I hear him telling the officer, but the officer is still yelling at him. And then at this time, now they've brought another officer there. And so I can hear my son begging and pleading as they have pulled him out of the car at gunpoint with a taser, like, Mom, why are they doing this? And mind you, all of this escalated in less than 3 minutes. And so I got somebody to pick me up. When I asked for a supervisor to meet me on the scene, when I met the supervisor, I explained what I actually heard over the phone. And the supervisor's words to me is, "Oh, I highly doubt that happened." And I had my son in handcuffs and I asked him, was he being arrested? And they said, yes. I asked for what? The officer said for resisting an officer. I said, well, you actually can't arrest him for that. There was an actual ordinance passed from the work that I've done with Gangs Are for All that's now not an arrestable offense. But they kept us on the side of the road for an hour and 28 minutes as they tried to figure out a reason to arrest my son. And so as they were doing that, I got on a live video and I just started hitting people with the data and talking about how Black people in our community were less than 20% of the community, but they were 74% of the jail population. How we were 8.8 times more likely to be arrested. How our children were 9.9 times more likely to go to juvenile. And even how that directly related to the suspension rates at the school and the school to prison pipeline. So because I had done so much work with many of the community organizations, many of the people that advocate in our community, they called on the sheriff at the time and they asked her to fix this. The sheriff was out of town. She called me back and we had a nice conversation. We scheduled a meeting. So I let the sheriff, so for me, okay, we're going to resolve it. I'm very pragmatic and diplomatic. So we're going to talk about how this can be done differently and we can work collaboratively. Well, within a few hours of me speaking with the sheriff, they released the video, a portion of the video, about 13 minutes of the video with my son handcuffed with no sound. And then basically they sounded the racist dog whistle. So people came out of the woodworks and that's what he gets. And he's a criminal and you're an ignorant bee who raised a horrible son. And so mind you, my son is an honor roll student. He speaks proper English. And as I was clear with everyone, I did everything right. I did everything that they said I needed to do in order to raise my son to prevent something like this from happening. When I met with the sheriff, I went in, I think she thought I was going to be accusatory. I was not. I went in, I had questions. I asked her, what do you do if you're at a traffic stop and you're scared? She said, call communications. I said, well, that's what we did. I said, what do you do if we can't comply? What if he did not speak English? What if he was handicapped and couldn't get out of the car? She stated, well, as long as we can see his hands. I was like, well, his hands were on the steering wheel. She said, but they were on the steering wheel aggressively. I asked her, how was that even possible? So then she responded, well, it was his fault because he was speeding. And so I asked her, have you seen how many speeding tickets I had at that age? She told me, no, it's not relevant. I told her it's absolutely relevant because speeding is something that young children do. It should not have escalated to him being dragged out of a vehicle at gunpoint. So she told me about all the de-escalation training they'd had. I told her the training was null and void because if the officer who was trained could not de-escalate a situation, how could you expect that from an 18-year-old who's never had any police interaction? And my final question to her was, why did you post the video? And she told me that she had a point to prove. And her point to me, and I said, as a citizen that you're elected to protect, your response to my son being improperly treated was to post a video and try to criminalize him. And so I told her at that time, I didn't have a platform, but now that you've given me one, I plan to use it. And so I've been very forward facing since that point.
Yeah, that's a great Chanae. I've walked that story with you, so I know it, I get it. But I know a lot of our listeners probably have never heard that much detail. And Diyonne, I know your story. People are like, "What? The governor got involved? What now?" For the longest, I was given the wrong number. I had my number too high, over 300 and something feet. And is that what we're talking about? So I'm hearing all of this, and what I'm thinking about is all of that sounds like it takes so much courage to jump out there and just do this stuff. Like, where does that come from? Where do you get that kind of courage from? How do you know what to do and what to say? Chanae, you mentioned jumping on boards. Di, I know you did the same thing with getting on boards. I'm sorry, candidate McGraw. I know you did some things with getting on boards and things of that nature. Can you tell us a little bit about Chanae and I, just how do you start? Because I can hear the passion still in both of your voices around what it is that you're talking about. So how does a person start? You saw an issue, you wanted to do something about it, but everybody doesn't have that. Everybody doesn't have that thing. And Chanae, I've said a bunch of times, we all serve. We even in our circle, we all have different roles to play, and we all play them very well. But a lot of times people think they have to be the Sinead that's going to go right after the right in the sheriff's face and do it. Are there other how do you start? How do you get started? And I do know, let me just say too, for Sinead took that very personally, and she went on an all-out campaign to ensure that the sheriff was not reelected. And guess what? The sheriff was what?
Not
Not
reelected.
reelected. So again, and again, it's just different ways. But my question, just in the midst of all of that storytelling, is really how do you get started? How do you keep the strength going?
I
Sinead,
actually want to start first.
go ahead, go ahead,
And the
Go
Sinead.
reason
ahead.
that I
Go
want to
ahead.
start first is because outside of helping ensure that the sheriff get elected, we ensured to help candidate McGraw get elected the first time. And
Absolutely.
it's the same answer to that question. You start with your why. One of
Mhm.
the things I do many things, but outside of advocacy, before I did any of this, I worked in the corporate world. So I am currently a licensed real estate agent. Like I stated, I was a bank manager for one of the largest banks in the nation. I even worked in the administration office at UF Health, Shands, and also at HCA Healthcare. And every single company that I ever worked for is exactly the same reason that you do advocacy. You start with your why. And so for me, my why are my children. And so
Mhm.
any and everything that I do is for them. And so when it meant getting that sheriff out, that starts with my children. The reason that it was so imperative and we were so successful with getting candidate McGraw elected the first time is because I started with the why. And even with her opponent at that time, they wanted to paint that opponent. Oh, she was the perfect candidate and she was going to attain equity for our children and she was going to close the gaps. And so, for a person who's directly impacted by those things, how are you going to do that, and what is your proven track record? And that's the why. And so with candidate McGraw, well, the reason we were so able to be so successful and they had counted her out and thought that she was not going to be successful is because for black parents who they had blamed for so long and who knew that we were advocating for our children and we were giving it our all just as everybody else was, we knew it was imperative in order to ensure that candidate McGraw was successful because our why is our children.
Right.
Yeah, and
Okay. Go ahead,
I totally agree with Shanae, but my I'm gonna come from the perspective, growing up in a parent home. My family is a very strong family. I mean, from my
Mhm.
great grandmother
Yep.
to my grandmother, my great aunts, my aunts. If you were around, you're in the Ryle Webb Lockhart family, hey, you must speak up, stand up for what's right. And my mother, growing up in Memphis, my pastor preached this. I mean, during the summer, every summer, you had to learn about advocacy. You had your spiritual, you had your political arena, all of and your educational trips to learn about your history. All of that was instilled in me in my upbringing. So I was blessed to have that. But when I went to an all white high school, like some of my friends, being an African American, we found ourselves floating, but I never floated. My mother always said, "You be authentically you." I was told that every day, all day. And so when I thought about it, I said, you know what? I need that HBCU experience. One of my
Mhm.
cousins who attended Florida A&M said, hey, you need to go to FAM. And I'm going to tell you something. When I got to FAM and got in the School of Business, you know what? I truly blossomed because they taught us about advocating. You had a chance to interact with CEOs of companies, Exxon's, those great internships you had. And on those, in my internship, one of them, I'll never forget, Pepsi Cola. What I learned about, I always dress nice. We were taught, we were called SBIs, and we had on suits. And I would never forget, you're 19 years old and you walk into Pepsi Cola, and in some of your Caucasian people look to you and say, I had a lady say up to me, you're an uppity Negro. I said, I beg your pardon? What do you mean an uppity Negro? And you know what? Being a true sister and being like my mother, I had to go there. And I'm not going to say what I said all on the radio. However, racism. was that's when I had my first, we recognized it, but as a person and as a student, to have that first experience with racism up in Detroit, because I was in Detroit, Michigan. And then when I came to Gainesville, I promoted at Santa Fe College. I was able to promote. And I tell you, when I promoted, because I had that business background, I was able to dress nice, bringing in Bank of America and other corporate sponsors. People were jealous of that, because they were coming to work, dressed casually, but me, I came to work with a suit. And they didn't appreciate that. And so I began to get some racist comments. And so I had to deal with that. And being in Gainesville, coming from Memphis, Tennessee, and Florida A&M, I saw how divided Alachua County was. So one of the things I decided to do, I said, you know what? I went to some MLK activities, and I got involved with MLK, which I'm the vice president of that organization now. And I met Representative Honorable Rodney Long, and I saw how he was advocating. And one of the conversations he had with me, he said, if you're going to survive in Gainesville, Florida, you want to one day be able to work for yourselves. Because what happens is when you work for places like the University of Florida, if you work for a Shands or you work for the city, well, most people are not going to bite the hand that feeds them, because they got to make sure they can feed themselves.
Right.
Me, I wasn't afraid of that, because I was taught, first seek the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added. If you put God first, that's how I was raised, then he will add everything else. But you got to believe. And so people who know me, I am extremely strong in my faith. I don't care if it's a room full of alligators. I don't care if it's a room full of snakes. I'm going to walk through, because I know who I belong to. And so I began to, and I'm an only child. So when I had my children, like she said, the why, but before I had children, I was volunteering in Alachua County Public Schools. And I saw the mainstream kids, they just were falling by the wayside like running water. If you were in advanced programs, they had a voice, but your kids in mainstream did not have a voice. So I began I didn't know the parents. I would meet them at the Starbucks, didn't know them. I didn't care if they were black or white, purple or green. It's about the children. And so I began to find my advocacy. And when I had my children, I was involved heavily. When I didn't have a lot of money, because Gaines, my first job, I was making $395 every 2 weeks when I arrived at working Santa Fe, did not pay any money.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I was able to find my strength. I would talk to my mom and say, you know what, Mama, I don't know how my husband got me. I cried the first 3 months while I was in Gainesville, because I saw, and there were people, and see, in Memphis, everybody pushed everybody. When I hear people say, "Oh, you gonna run? You think they gonna let 3 blacks on the board?" I mean, what do you mean think? You gotta believe,
right?
But because that, and I try to be different. I don't try to follow what everybody else does. And like I told you, I found me when I was campaigning. I found me a little jingle, because there was COVID. People were depressed. People were going through a lot of things. So I wanted to be different from everybody else. And those are some of the things that I did. But when it came to how do you begin, I continue to seek God, and I'm not afraid. And I have been blessed to be able to work for myself, and I'm thankful to God for that opportunity. And because I don't belong to anybody when I say that, I mean, I'm not working for the city. I'm not working for somebody. I got to be careful, walk on my toes. I'm authentically me. Because I'm an entrepreneur, because I'm a businesswoman, I'm able to make sure, whether I'm working or not, people know me. I'm going to advocate anyway. However, it makes you real free to be able to. And so that's kind of where
I got it. I got it, Joe. I see you trying to come in. So go ahead. Chanae, I'm going to ask you, just if you, after Joe is finished, I want to throw this out here so you'll be thinking about it, even though I know you don't have to. But my question to you is, what is advocacy in action? If you were going to personify advocacy, what would that look like? And just hold that, because Joe trying to get in. I'm going to shut up. Go ahead, Joe.
I got a couple, but I'm going to go ahead. Chanae, she said something powerful about when her son got pulled over, she knew his rights. She knew the rights. There's a lot of us don't know the rights. We have a computer in our hands, our cell phone. There's so much information just right there in the palm of our hands that a lot of people don't even tap into. So that's one thing I would like to talk to you about, how for people, how people can find out about their rights. But the other thing you was talking about how this, I think you were talking about the school system up in Georgia, where they was talking about and teaching Black history throughout all the classes, the math and everything. But now, I guess especially here in Florida, we got a governor that's against anything like that. So it's critical race theory. What's that? They call it wokeness. Wokeness is basically a campaign totally against it. So how do you combat that? Continue to help us having all history taught in school and not just the whitewashed history.
Well, both of them can answer that one, but go ahead, Chanae. I think he was speaking to you directly. That's going to be a good answer. Let me
So
leave
to
that.
me, for me, I don't think that we leave it to the schools to teach history here. What was very different about Georgia is that many of the teachers were Black. So that means they took ownership of it. It was something that was extremely deliberate. I actually was on with an organization, the Alachua County Black History Task Force. And one of the things that we were trying to do was advocate with putting African American history in schools. And this is something they've been working on for almost 20 years.
Yep,
Even in the
22.
state statute, yes, this is a requirement. And so when I look, but then Alachua County actually has an A because it states that it meets the requirements. And so I know some of the advocates talk about the spirit of the law and the actual legalities of the law. And so when you go and look, I remember looking at the standards, and one of them was like Reconstruction. How is it that you talk about Reconstruction, but you don't talk about people like Hiram Revels? You don't talk about how successful Blacks were in the South. Every person that they wanted to discuss, like Robert Johnson, it was that presenting to us that it was a white savior.
Right.
I think for me, the reason that history was so rich is because of not what I learned in school, but what I learned in McKnight Achievers and other organizations like that, where we in pre-collegiate, where our history was something that was very deliberate. We have fallen short because our history is a part of our identity. And when it is erased, which they attempted to do 400 years ago, we don't have a basis to stand on. We don't know what we're pulling from and what we're drawing from. And so I challenge us as a people to not, and people always say, oh, she's so blackety, I am blackety black. I remember being taught that Malcolm X was such a radical. And one of the things that he stated is that you don't leave it to them to teach our children our history. We must teach it to ourselves, because they're not going to teach it in a way to empower us. They're not going to tell us about the scriptures in the Bible that talk about freedom and liberation. They're not going to talk about the slave revolts. And actually, the manner in which they painted Haiti is nothing like how Haiti actually is.
Right.
And it is those things that even now, when they teach us about us getting off the back of the bus, they paint the pictures of Rosa Parks was just this lone wolf that did it herself, instead of highlighting the actual community came together and refused to get on the Montgomery bus line. They walked the soles off their shoes. They came together and cooked food for each other. They gave each other rides. And so when they did this, even with the Black Panther Party, a lot of people think, oh, they were just this radical group. But the Black Panther Party came to play, or came to be, because they were policing the police. And so they were protecting us from police brutality. They actually sued governments. There was like 5 different lawsuits. They created the WIC program. They created the free school lunch program that the federal government, who had rolled out one 3 years before, that was nothing as robust as ours, actually turned around and adopted it. And because we let them feed us the history, all of that history got lost. Even when it came to Amendment 2 in the constitutional carry, what happened and took place was that they were the same way they were terrorizing us with guns. And they said, oh, you can go into these places. Right now, Ron DeSantis is passing the exact same kind of law that was passed in California, that they immediately overturned when the Black Panther Party went into their state capitol with their guns, because they said that they could. And that's the deal, because we're having other people to teach us our history. We're learning things like about Katherine Johnson them in Hidden Figures. When we are deliberate about our history and where we came from, we not only have an identity to actually work from, but we're better woven with each other and interrelated within our community. And so one of the things I talk about a lot of times, to transition into Catherine's question, when she talks about what is advocacy in action starts by telling the truth. And one of the ways that you tell, they can hear you. One of the ways that you tell the truth is to be very deliberate about telling the truth in our history, telling the truth in our families, telling the truth about our systems, because we actually have to start there. And then I want other people to know, they see the forward-facing advocacy that we do. The real work is done behind the scenes. and that is educating ourselves, that is making the phone calls, that is serving people. The
Right.
way that advocacy and action happens is that you serve people and you get your ego out of the way.
Yes.
One of the things that is so admirable about Diyonne is, in the midst of all of this, she has not stopped serving people. So it doesn't matter about her court case. It doesn't matter all of the roles that she has. It doesn't matter all of the company that she runs. She
Mm-hmm.
still serves people first. One of
Yeah.
the things that's about me, people see me forward facing, so they think I'm somebody that's amazing. I'm just Chanae. When I go into spaces, I'm the one that serves the food. I'm the one that wants to take out the trash. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
one that cleans up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those things that we actually need to be mindful. That's what advocacy is. When you get a servant's heart and you lead as a servant leader, all the
Mm-hmm.
other things come into play because you're going to center the people that are most directly impacted about the things that are going on.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and for me, that's one of the reasons I made my campaign slogan, commitment to serve, courage to lead, because I put things into action to bring about
Mm-hmm.
positive change. That's what it's all about. You
Right.
cannot. I'm a good connector. I'm able to
Mm-hmm.
build relationships with people because I'm a solution oriented. I don't listen to all this naysayers and this side
Mm-hmm.
bar conversation while they're talking. I'm going in, researching, finding the information that we need to make the difference. Who can I talk to? And you
Mm-hmm.
can't be afraid. Like if I walk in a place and somebody doesn't have a good attitude, I may say, I'm so sorry you're having a bad day today. Is there someone else that can help me? Because I
Mm-hmm.
want that person to say, wait a minute, we all in this together. We're human. If you're having a bad day, hey, get some help. Let's talk about it. But it's important to have those who are not afraid. And God gives everybody a role. I'm always really, really unique. Like Chanae, she gonna do things a different way. I'm gonna do different things a way. Catherine's gonna do things a different way. Joe, you're gonna do things different, but we can still come together as long as we understand each other personalities and how they operate and how they work. And we and come in things with an open mind, learning to
Mm-hmm.
listen. See, I'm always, I'm gonna ask you questions, and sometimes because I'm tall, I get that I'm 6 feet. I'm the shortest in my family. Everybody else is taller than me. But when you come in 6 feet, I'm always gonna try to look my best, dress nice. That can be intimidating to some people. And then when you have a lot of education, people, and I tell people, look, you don't have to be intimidated by me. I'm just asking simple questions. But somebody has it is about respecting the history, the legacy that was put before us. If it wasn't for your Rosa Parks, if it wasn't for Fannie Lou, what a Fannie Mae? What about them? They fought and died for us to be where we are. And if we're not careful, we have our own right here in the state of Florida. You
Mm-hmm.
have a Putin. You have
Yes. Agreed.
these people
Agreed.
are trying to take us back, but slavery days are over. I'm not Sister Rosa. I'm Diyonne McGraw, and I'm not looking to go backwards. And so, if we don't speak up and advocate, these things are happening right before us because we're too silent.
Yeah.
Somebody cannot be afraid to speak up. And I thank God. I say, well, God is using me for such a time as this. And it's not a matter of being snooty or sedity. It's a matter of respect for me because people died and fought. Dr. King and them, they advocated for us. They want us to stand. So out of respect, we should still be standing. But somewhere, I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday. When we were segregated, we did. We advocated, we worked well together. Then when we integrated and we started getting our degrees and we started getting education, somewhere along the line, some of us forgot. We got lost.
Mm.
And we got to get back to
Mm-hmm.
understanding that we all got to work together. It's not that you want to say, I don't want to work with all, races or parties or whatever. But there are those. And it's about fear, because if you look at our world, you look at our country, a lot of our Caucasian people, that race is becoming a minority. So now it's about fear. And
Mm-hmm.
fear has brought us to where we are now, where you have people who want to see the white supremacist groups are coming along. You could be somewhere just trying to advocate and do some things for our children. Look at Uvalde, Texas, all of these things that are going on. But if we just give up and if we don't pay attention, Roe versus Wade. Look at what's happening. And so out of respect, I tell people it's the reason why I make sure I continue to advocate. Like she said, kicking down doors. Hey, somebody has to do it because
Yeah.
none of the children, and that's my thing, none of our children, none of us asked to come in this world. Somebody made us.
Yep.
And so it's our responsibility to make sure our children are prepared. But if we all run scared, if we all run scared, the behavior that is displayed by people who are in leadership now will continue if we don't have the courage to lead in whatever our role, whatever capacity.
Right. I like the fact that you talked about whatever capacity, and the fact that you and Chanae are both talking about, even in our circle with the three of us, we all do things very differently, but it's like a very interesting puzzle though. It comes together and creates a huge picture that gets things done. So and I like that. I like that. If there's something that needs to be handled one way, we know how to handle it. If it needs to be handled another way, we know where to send it. So let me ask you, we know what to do when we need to get things done. So what do you tell people who want to do this work, want to be active advocates, and they are job scared? And as we all know, that is a very serious, often used tool of manipulation, and a silencer. And people often fall into that space where, well, I ain't gonna say nothing because they're gonna be looking at me at my job, and I've been lost my job. What else can they do? What else can people do if they're not gonna be the Chanae that's out there? Because Chanae is gonna bring it to you. Chanae is gonna bring it to you. One thing I love though is when she bring it to you, it's right. Yeah. She's not coming until she has her receipts. So with that being the case, and same with you, Di, you going straight down the middle. But what if it's somebody like me who's shy? Why y'all both look at me like that?
Chanae.
Like someone like me that's shy and doesn't
be a different Dr. Catherine Barnes somewhere. I don't know about the one here.
Somebody that's shy and maybe a little timid or a little afraid to do things. What can they do?
I'm still confused though. Who is the shy Catherine? Where that person at?
Yeah. It's me. It's y'all.
But I get it. I get what you're saying. Everybody that want to be in the leadership role, as far as coming from the dais, being running for candidate, because you do running for office, you got to have some tough skin. Yeah. But also, we do need those who are very knowledgeable, who may want to serve on boards, work behind the scenes. And sometimes we have to have the meeting before the meeting. They may be the person who can do the research or who are the expert, like me. I don't know every single thing. I've been involved, but I'm the change agent. I consider myself the change agent who will come together, put together my own kitchen cabinet, put together my own group and say, hey, here's the issue. How do we come up with solutions to make sure that happens? You need those individuals who are knowledgeable. If it comes to equity, we need someone who has a background in equity. I'm not going to hire, an art teacher, if they are trying to talk about equity, I'm going to get the best person for the job. And so what we have to do, excuse me?
I told Chanae to get her candidate.
But the thing is, you got to we need, like you said, we need all types. And then the person who's from the dais, who's not afraid, because you have to understand one thing about this field, and I can tell you, being the one who's in it and, who's a part of history now, I never thought in my lifetime that when I decided to run, it's always been a desire. The first time, you have to look at the dynamics of Alachua County. I knew I was going to have to run more than once, so people can. That's how it is. That's just is how the environment is. But that is something I had a desire to do and was not afraid to do it. But everybody can't do that because you got to have tough skin. I never thought that I would be running for office after being elected in 2020, and here I am running again. In 2022, when my term is supposed to be to 2024. That's right. But the thing is, we need people to serve on boards. We need people to shadow people like Chanae and I. Even yourself, Dr. Barnes. You have people who want to become an expert in the field. They need to serve on. I tell anybody, serve on the county, the city, or the school. Find your passion. What is your niche? But also, our leaders. If you think back, I go back to their belief in God. That's how they made it. You know, think about it. When you get sprayed with water hoses and dogs being sicked on you, that took courage for them to make it through. And to hear the stories of those people who still live today, out of respect. That's why, and God, I was chosen. You know, this God already knows how our lives are going to end up, how they're going to be. And this isn't just a part of my DNA, but also that family background. But I tell anybody, you got to serve, find your passion. And I think that's something that's lost, and we need leadership like myself and Chanae and you, and even what Joe is doing here, the advocacy to be on the airwaves so people can hear. That's how you gain knowledge. That's how you build relationships, and that's how you learn.
Right. Go ahead,
And
Chanae.
then for me, I want to say 2 points. Number one is build a foundation. So one of the reasons that I am so effective is we say it with slang that I come with the receipts, but it's about building a knowledge base. When you can stand on what you know, people can't back you down. And so you got to know what you believe in order to be able to advocate for it. And I'm going to take a shot at our religious community because often we are very religious, but we don't really understand our religion. We don't really understand the word. And so what happens is you can't be the salt and the light, which is what we say we are, or that basis or that foundation for people because you yourself don't even know what you believe. You just believe what somebody has told you. Utilizing that same theory, you have to get a body of knowledge, just like with us as parents. We don't start out as parents knowing everything that we need to know. So we draw from experiences, we draw from books, we draw from the environment around us. And so that also help transitions into not only knowing what you believe, but knowing and understanding that whatever you believe, where did it come from? Is it, for me, I'll be very clear with people, I am such a staunch advocate because it's a trauma response. I accidentally became the person that would have protected me as a child when I was little. And that's what we got to know. Some things we do are out of trauma. Some things that we do are because of improper and incorrect teachings. And so we have to be willing to be honest with ourselves and challenge our thought process in order to attain true change. Additionally, understanding who you are. One thing that I do with people that I help learn how to do advocacy and things like that is a personality assessment and then also a skills assessment. Sometimes we don't even know how amazing we are until somebody else is able to tell us.
That's right.
And so it's at that time, when somebody's able to show you just how amazing you are, you're able to take that leap, be able to do something or challenge yourself to do something you typically would not be comfortable with. And then also understanding that this work is hard, but it is necessary. Freedom is not, it's not given. It absolutely is something that we have to work for. But that's like every other aspect in our life. We go to work to make money so that we can live better. We go to school to get an education so that we can live better. So advocacy is the exact same thing. And so then I want to also throw out there, because Dr. Barnes didn't state that, Dr. Barnes and some other actual experts in our community helped to develop, actually they wrote the curriculum. I just gave them the idea, who I am, the platform, and what I wanted to be presented. And they built out a phenomenal 12-week curriculum that people are able to come and be able to be trained on not only just how to advocate here today, but they'll have the opportunity to do some real world advocacy. They'll learn about the history. They'll even learn about differences. A lot of Black people are very turned off to advocacy. And when we say terms like feminism and things like that, it's when you learn that Black feminism is wholly different than the traditional feminism. When you understand that actual activists, that those of us at the table, not only are we the experts, but we're the ones that are going to give everything that we got in order to create that change, because we understand how it directly impacts us. And then also understanding that we all have different roles, because Lord knows I want to go back to being the one that's serving the food and taking out the trash. But I understand at this space, this is the part that is necessary. And that there'll be a time where I'll be able to go back behind the scenes. So my role for anybody that is listening is to please reach out to me. I am trying to train my replacements.
I like it. I like it. And she has one heck of a curriculum to do it. You sure do. You sure do. You sure do.
Hear more about the curriculum. You just said something about the people or believers in politics. A lot of people, they believe in that separation of church and state, but the church, not the building, the people, the church should be affecting the state. We should be out there being a part of making a change. I want to go back a little bit. I know y'all was talking about people being involved. What about Diyonne? You was talking about how you had all these family members that was in politics.
Right.
What about somebody like me? I could think of no family members that ran for any office or anything like that. So in my mind, or my family's mind, like running for office is not even, nobody even thought about it, nobody even thinking about it. So how can you reach those people? There's some qualified people, some good people out there, but it's not even crossing their mind. So how can you reach those people to get involved?
Well, how you reach them is because I believe in 13 times. If I can get you to do something 13 times in a row, then you're connected. And so I'm real, in part of my background is specialized in behavior. I'm real good at picking up on people's personalities. Catherine and Chanae will tell you that. And so I'm real good at mentoring. And I have some people who are really interested in running, and they didn't know anything about church. They didn't anything, they say you're so strong in your faith. And when you, through me as a person, if you're around me, you'll be able to feel that about me. And I'm real good at getting that person in one-on-one. Hey, I need you to go. And I'm smooth about it. They'll tell you, I have someone who does want to run for office. And she said, you know what? I never thought about running for office till I got around you. But you know what I did? I just started building that relationship. Started inviting this person to come and go places with me. And the more they got into it and they saw how I was able to build relationships and make the connection, now they're considering, because I'm not going to do this forever. So we got to find paper. And part of my work, too, was being president of the African American Accountability Alliance. I was president of the Political Action Committee, PAC. And so I was a political action committee. I was the president. And so bringing those people around me, getting in my circle. I don't try to bring a lot of people in my circle because when you are someone who is a political figure, you're always you got to see, you always may be under attack. And that is the one thing that you really have to sit down and help people understand. And so I have that conversation, get your business in order. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to make mistakes. And so I teach people about telling your story first. But one thing about it, we got to have leadership. And so getting over that fear is that if you just keep doing it over and over again, it will finally connect, because everybody's not into the church. But once they find a passion for it, and this person, they have a passion for children, but they also have a passion for the city. And they're really involved heavily in some things in the city. And we'll see that person in the future. But because of them just being around me, and the same thing with me, I got around Rodney Long here. I have people in my corner, like when I decided I wanted to run, one of the first people I reached out to was Catherine. Hey, Catherine, I don't know everything, but I call Catherine a guru in education. The girl is a bad sister. I'm going to give you your flowers while you're living. She's a bad sister.
Thank you.
To education. And so, and Chanae and I have grown and built a relationship with others. Chanae said, I don't know nobody, and Chanae know how I move. And it's easy. And sometimes you have that personality to kind of just draw people to you. And I think Chanae can back me up on this. Then it becomes easier. And then once I build that relationship, I rope you in. And so, and it's just about having that relationship and that connection with people. And like now, we're drawing in young people. Chanae will tell you, we got some young people so excited. We got one more coming. And one of them said to me today when they saw me, I think I want to run for office. Hey, it's a way, just being that connector.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because it looks like I'm frozen. I'm frozen. I'm glad I froze laughing. Didn't freeze with a real just looking crazy. I don't know. I'm glad you can hear me. But yeah, that's I like what you're saying and how you're making that, like Joe Madison always says, put it where the goats can get it. Not as a pun or anything to call anybody a goat, but really to make things so plain that anybody can hear you, anybody can understand it. So with that, I think the question around, what about people who don't have that experience? Am I hearing that there are opportunities for them to maybe mentor? You got some people like me who I've said, I told both of y'all, I'm not running for nothing. And
That's what you say right now. That's
I'm
what you
not
say
running for
now.
anything. However,
That's what you say right now.
Joe, they bullied me. I'm reporting this publicly. Look at Chanae. So, Chanae, fish your face. So, but with that, is there something that just somebody could do maybe? I know Shanae said reach out to her. Definitely. I do know that you all have started a organization, Shanae. And I know Don, you're a part of that. We actually all are a part of that. Shanae, you want to tell us a little bit about that and really how you're getting people who maybe traditionally wouldn't even think they could be, particularly people with, how about people with a background? I know that there's some strong people out there, and I know it's one watching for sure because he's already texted me. He's ready to run. He wanted to jump in the mayoral race right now. When we started talking about that, and his conversation was from the beginning. Well, I got a background, so yeah. So
Oh,
what would you say about that, Shanae?
so first,
And
I would say I would love to respond. So whoever that person is, if you're watching, I got a background, and so before I even talk about my organization, I would love to talk about my background.
Yeah.
So a lot of people may not be aware, if you're not aware of me, that a few months ago the city commission shut down a whole city commission meeting. And they tried to paint the picture that I was a threat and then tried to cite that I have an arrest record. Well, I love to talk about my arrest record because it shows how bogus the system is. I have things like fighting where somebody came to my home and the police refused to intervene. I have a felony welfare fraud where it was my caseworker who put my information in incorrectly. And then they tried to make me responsible for it. I just happen to be more versed on than other people and refused to take the plea deal. But I actually had to go turn myself in and be put into the jail and put right back out. And then additionally, for it, while I might not be a person that's convicted of anything, there are also many crimes that are created out of survival. And I'm
yep,
very clear with that. And so we have to understand that when there's the story of Michael Vick. Michael Vick went to prison, and the reason that he went to prison is because he had all of these dogs that he had housed in a cage together. He had the dogs there without food. He had the dogs there without water. When everybody found out, what happened is the dogs started to fight and to kill each other. When that happened and took place, they didn't blame the dogs, they blamed Michael Vick. And that's what we have to understand as it relates to our people within our communities. Many of the crimes that people commit are crimes of survival. So when
mm,
we understand that part of it, then we understand how to heal our community so that people are not forced to commit crimes that are and make decisions out of survival. To a person that's with a record, don't let that be what detours you, because what you was for you is for you. So reaching out to us, we'll be able to look at the election law and be able to state and see whatever your charges might be. If there's something that hinders you from running, you'd be surprised what or not. You would also be surprised how many people that are elected are
say
whole
it,
crooks.
say
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh
And I
yeah.
want to be very clear with that. We have a House of Representative right now in the state of Florida that was accused of trafficking young children, but he still is a House of Rep person. And
Right.
so it is also understanding the 13th Amendment. There were times that people had records for things like the reason that loitering is a crime is because after they passed the 13th Amendment, where you could no longer put people
Yep.
in involuntary servitude,
Yep.
except that if they had a criminal record, that's how loitering became a criminal offense. So people don't even understand the origination of that.
Mhm.
Also, I want people to start to have conversations about theft. The fact that property has more value than human life is extremely problematic. And it is something that a person who runs for office has the opportunity to be able to highlight. I'm very clear that your challenges are literally what is going to bring you into your successes. My
Yeah.
experiences is what makes me so absolutely effective and the expert on many of the things. Myself and former City Commissioner Gail Johnson, we started an organization called Florida Forward Coalition. And the reason that we did that is, as a city commissioner, Commissioner Johnson understood that she could not make the change that needed to be made for Black people and for Black families.
Right.
Because no matter how hard she worked, no matter what best practices she went and found, no matter how she held people accountable, she was one voice of seven. And she realized that her voice kept being drowned out. At the same time, the culmination of it was we're living in a county where they want to say we're so progressive, but ironically, we can never move the needle as it relates to Black issues. And so we decided to come together and be a formidable force. And so we understand that the easiest way, when people say, oh, change is going to take 5 or 10 years, it does not. We're seeing that right now in our political climate. Things that it took centuries to get and or 50 years ago are now being dismantled in like 5 or 6 years. So that means that when we do things like run and looking at supporting candidates as a slate,
Mm-hmm.
then we have the opportunity to be a great deal more successful. And
Right.
so what we do is we actually have a consulting company that I'm able to work with multiple candidates because election laws hinder candidates from working together. But then we
Right.
also have Florida Forward, which we are, it's not about party, it's about people. So we do
Mm-hmm.
issues-based advocacy. So we have a GRU campaign because of the rates for GRU that are detrimental to people in their lives. We have a
GRU is
campaign when it looks
Gainesville
at voter
Regional
registration.
Utilities. Yeah, GRU is
Yep, my
Gainesville
apologies.
Regional
Yes.
Utilities. It's the electric company in Gainesville.
Mhm.
Yep.
Go ahead,
And so
Chanae.
then we have a quality affordable housing
Mm-hmm.
initiative that we are working on because there is no housing. 60% of the housing in Gainesville is for students, and students don't make up 60% of the population. So that means regular people from the community are being moved out. We have
Right.
another initiative, which is the people's budget. Where we've gone through the budget, we understand the city's budget and how that funding is not properly allocated for our people in order to be able to close some of these gaps. And those are just, we do voter registration, voter purges. We're also very deliberate about events that we actually have because our focus is on, we call it BIPOC communities. And BIPOC encompasses Black, Hispanic, and any other of the minorities that are actually left out in the cold. And so the reason for that is because there's a totally different experience when you were a Black person or a Hispanic person that are within communities because of how systems have actually been built. And so for us, we're asking people when we make fun, we make calls, we text, emails, and asking people to get involved. It may start out with you filing some paperwork or making phone calls or knocking on doors, but you're going to have the opportunity to actually learn. We also need people to understand that people that are elected, they listen to people that show up. So you actually
Mm-hmm.
joining an organization, you are have the ability to get the knowledge base that you need, but then also work with other people that are working toward the exact same common goals. And there is so much value that actually is in there. And then as a part of that, as we're looking at candidates, I don't want a candidate that just looks like me. I don't want a candidate that says that they represents me. I want a
Right.
candidate that can show me that they represent me because
That's
I
right.
am deliberate about representing my people and doing it in action. And so we don't
Yeah.
look for people that are politicians because politicians want to play games and pander to other politicians. When we say for the people, we mean by the people. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
actual people who are not or not political. We want, for me, this is not about politics. This is building our community, and we need to build a sustainable community in order to keep communities safe. One thing I always like to tell people is that safe communities are not always healthy, but healthy communities are always safe. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the goal that we actually should be working toward. And the only way to be able to do that is to address the houses that are on fire. And that typically starts with Black people.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Joe. I saw you leaning in.
I know we over time, but I had three questions, or not three, with three reasons I believe people use for not being involved or saying that they don't want to vote. So I just want if we can just address this first one. I've been hearing a lot of about on the news. The word is a powerful word, gerrymandering.
Mm.
I say is I'm just like for people who don't know what it means. It's three types of gerrymandering where the party draws lines, the incumbent draws lines, or they have racial lines where they politicians draw lines to favor who they would like to be elected. So a lot of people are hearing this and they saying that their or feel like their vote is getting watered down. So I just want to ask both of you, how do you address that word of gerrymandering?
Well, it's manipulation. You know what they have done is that you have leadership, and that's why I tell people it's important. We can run locally. Your local elections are real important, but also we need people to run for those House and Senate seats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Mm-hmm.
Chanae probably will talk more about this. You know, the Democrat, we had 30 something seats, or four, I know 45 starting out. I think we were down to 30 something seats. I don't remember the number exactly, that we weren't challenging and nobody was running. And
Mm-hmm.
so that tells you a lot about our Democratic Party because when you talk about gerrymandering, these people get the power, they run for certain seats, and then while they're in the power seats, They change the boundaries so they can cut out us as a whole. Just like right now, you know, we're fighting about single member districts in Alachua County.
Yes.
We don't have one single member district where a majority of people who look like us live. So
Right.
that will cut us completely out. But
Yep.
when you get in those seats for running for the House and the Senate, you have the power. That's why they're making up all these crazy rules now, because they're in the seats, and so they have the power and authority for the gerrymandering. They can manipulate how they want to the boundaries so that they cut certain people out, so that they create seats so that their party can win.
And I
Janae?
want to be very clear that this is all about power. When you
Right.
have millionaires and people that make six figures spending millions of dollars to run for a seat, but they only make $29,000 a year, you have
Yeah.
to absolutely understand that this is about aligning their pockets and
Yep.
doing it on the backs of black people. And I
Yep.
want to say that very clearly. And so what happens is our votes can be watered down, but when you only have about 36% of people turning out to vote, that means that they make it that more difficult because they know that we look at voting as an inconvenience and not as
Mm-hmm.
a power move. They've
Mm-hmm.
been very deliberate with their messaging to make us think that our vote does not actually count. And I challenge us to really understand that if our vote did not count, why is it that they're working so hard to water it down? In Florida, the current governor tried to pass a bill to redraw the lines to cut out two black voting districts.
Yep.
While that is heinous, what is even more heinous is when Representative Angie Nixon and then
Mm-hmm.
Troy McCready and Yvonne Henson were the only three people on the floor and state actually advocating against it and
Yeah.
doing the sit-in. The
Yeah.
fact that you have so many, if we want to go down party lines, Democrats who are quote unquote good Democrats, well, they don't want to make waves, left those three people down on that floor by themselves in order to fight against that and challenge that. We
Yeah.
got problems. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you are here to serve the people, you do it with boldness and you do it with courage, just like Diyonne said, with courage to lead. If you don't have room and space to do that, there is no room for you in our legislature.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, we can't win anything if we don't put a horse in the race.
Right.
Many of these horrible people are in office just because no one took the time to attempt to run against them and energize, as they state, the base. I also challenge us that are tuning in to be very deliberate about engaging the people that we love and making them accountable for making their vote count. The
Mm-hmm.
one space that we all have equal power, no matter your color, no matter your race, no matter your age, no matter how much you make, is in that ballot box. The
Mm-hmm.
only way that we make a dent, even as it relates to the ballot box, is if we vote together and we vote as a collective. We are quite often not happy with many of the candidates, but we have to understand that many of the candidates that we're stuck with because we're not the ones coming to the table. So those candidates are pandering to what we call the moderate white.
Right.
And Dr. MLK Jr. was very clear that the most detrimental people to our society are the moderate whites. At least with other people that are very bold in their racism, they are very clear. So we know who we're dealing with. It's the moderate white that's actually in the way of actually pushing the needle to the other side. And that's where we are right now. The manner in which laws across multiple states, these voting laws to make it more difficult to cast your ballot, should be what is motivating us to get to the polls. There are so many people that say that their vote does not count, but then they tell me that they've never voted. How
Mm-hmm.
is it that your vote is supposed to count if you've never cast one? And
Right.
Right.
so we're now seeing the remnants of what has happened because of our failure. Even in the state of Florida, Andrew Gillum lost by 30,000 votes.
Yep.
We have more than a million people that are registered that did not show up. And
Wow.
so elections have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, as we're watching some of the things that are coming out of the Supreme Court, the people that determine who gets on the Supreme Court are elected by us, the people. And so we
Right.
must understand that and get to the point where we are asking questions. What is gerrymandering? Why is it happening? But then
Yeah.
also understanding that once you take the time to get educated, we have to act and we have to act together. We cannot sit and be scared. I understand that there was a time that respectability was a way
Mm-hmm.
that we survived. I am very clear. I don't subscribe to that. Respectability is appealing to the morals of people who don't have morals. So we need to stand up and be proud. We need to stand up and be bold. And I don't care how many zeros you got behind your name, if you're not able to leverage your role, leverage your money and anything else in order to help change things and attain power, then you don't have any real power.
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
Man,
Joe, you had a second word?
I actually got two.
Go ahead. I'm gonna Joe, let me back in. I'm gonna see because I need to be moving my head. So go ahead.
You go.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, it's okay. Well, I'm just jump on this. The other one is the electoral college. Do we still need it? And like I said, a lot of people use that as like, okay, we got electoral college still here. It was came up with
We
back in the
never needed it.
70s. Why are we still using it?
We never needed it. The electoral college was racist on its face. And the reason that it actually was implemented is because at the time, black people weren't even deemed citizens. So at that time, it was the watered down our particular vote. The electoral college, there is no space for it. The people should be able to directly elect whoever it is that's president. But then I also want to be clear with people, the most power that we have and the game changing power that we have is at our local level and at our state's level. They often want to talk and advocate and talk about states' rights. The whole sole purpose of states' rights was to be able to uphold slavery. It needs to be our responsibility to hold them to states' rights by getting rid of the electoral college and being able to leverage the power in our states.
Yes. Yes. The electoral college is the devil.
Okay. And the last one, you kind of addressed the other one. People say my one vote don't count. And what do you say, Diyonne, about one vote don't count?
And I've told many of people, and your vote does count, and that's a conversation I've had so much recently, because I have, and you know why? Because there are some people that, and they will tell you, there are some people that I have helped, and I have helped, and I have helped, and I
Yep.
told this year. I have one right now. She's doing everything in her power, Miss Diane. I went and registered. Because they don't realize that if you need social services, you're talking about dealing with things like the health department, and you need Medicaid and those type of things versus having Florida Blue, and I lost this, and I would tell you what has changed some people now, and they understand that their voting counts this year is, guess what? Because of what Chanae and I said earlier, I'm a realtor too. Housing.
Mm-hmm.
Gainesville has been divided so with the have and the have-nots. Our rent has tripled. And so a lot of people have been left out. And I told some people who I've been helping, one young lady, I've been helping her 16 years. I said, this year, I can't do it. I have told you all about voting. And sometimes people have to have those tough lessons. And they understand now. Because you have families, you have 4 and 5 families who are living together now, Joe, because of how expensive it is for housing. So they understand now. I said, do you all realize, we talked about earlier, Andrew Gillum, he lost by 30,000 votes. In Alachua County alone, 37,000 people did not go and vote. Alachua County, we could have won. And I said, because you keep making the decision not to vote, they continue to get away with these things that cause harm to us as a people. But now that this housing crisis is here, and people are having to live 4 and 5 deep, they say, "Oh, you know what? I'm Miss Diane. I'm gonna vote this time." So sometimes we have to fall hard.
Right.
Sometimes we have to fall on hard times and to understand. So, and because they understand that, like-minded people. Now, I challenge you to go and get 10 more people who felt the same way.
Mm-hmm. And that's really how it happens, Joe, and to everyone that's listening. The same. That's really how it happens. It has to. Everybody has to be responsible for influence in their sphere, within their sphere of influence. And if you can move just those people who listen to you and get them to move the people that listen to them, we can grow this exponentially. I know in Jacksonville, we used to get this thing at the poll right before you went in. It was Corrine's Picks. I don't know if anybody remembers Corrine's Picks, but remember she used to give you that picture, that paper of all of a slate of candidates. That's what that means when Chanae was talking about a slate. It's a list of candidates who've been vetted, and that the the group, in that case it was Corrine Brown, that she felt like would be the best place for you, best place for you to put your vote. I'm going to ask you to learn your candidates and learn about them yourself. But if you can't and don't have time and don't know how, then at least trust the people that do take the time to do it. And because that's here, when you're given a slate, vote the slate. Vote the slate, especially if you don't have a reason not to. Unless you have a reason not to, then that way again, we have got to be unified in a way that finally makes a difference. We can come together and put Pookie on the t-shirt. We can come together and do all that. But it's hard for us to come together and say we're going to vote. We can come together to do anything else but vote. And what we need to do now is to start thinking about two things. One, are you registered? Because the registration deadline is coming up really soon.
July 25th.
July 25th is the deadline to be registered. Because of the things that the governor is doing here in our state, you need to go and check your voter registration status. You need to check to make sure, even if you have been a registered voter, check to make sure that something has not changed in your status. Go check that out. Check that out. And then if it has, you still got time to fix that before July 25th. You got to be registered to vote by July 25th. The other thing is you got to really engage in making sure not only you do it, but that you help somebody else to do it. So once you go, it's real quick. And I posted it on my page. I know it's been on Chanae's page. I know it's been on Di's page as well. It's there to tell you how to go do it. It's a quick button. You click on the button, it takes you right there. You look to see if it's right. If it's wrong, then you fix it. It tells you how to do that too. We have got to take a moment to care enough about things that will choke you out if you don't care enough about it. And I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes, like the Diyonne when you were just sharing, the housing, it had to be a housing crash where now it's 50 people living in Big Mama house.
Yeah.
This is the only place y'all can go. And for people to think like, oh, this is probably not right.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't take that. It shouldn't take that. And right now, at this point, all we need you to do at this point, get registered if you're not registered, and then vote in the primary election. Let me ask this question real quick, Joe, if you don't mind. I know we're over time, but I mean, this is good stuff. So the primary election. So sometimes people think, well, the president is not a presidential election, so I really don't have to vote, or it's not or we got to wait till November. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the primary election and the general election, and understanding? And I'll jump back in. Let me say this first before you start doing that. Also, when think about your local offices, the presidential office does not impact you as much as your judges, as your state's attorney, as your governor, as your the sheriff. Those are the things that all kinds of your soil and water folks. All of that stuff matters. All that stuff matters. When you're talking about the people won't come and spray and you got bad mosquitoes, and they're people that you voted for or didn't vote for that's making that decision that your neighborhood not that important. You need to know that. You need to know that. So now let me go back to my question, because y'all know me. Y'all know I forgot what it was. But whatever the question was, yeah. What I don't know what the question was. I forgot. I got carried away. Sorry.
So two things. Number one, your question was, what's the difference between the primary and the general election, and why we should vote in the primary election? So as you asked the question, you pretty much answered the question. Mm-hmm. And that's the deal. The deal is typically on the primary election ballot, like that's where the school board election is. Right. You vote for your school board person on the primary election. You only vote for school board candidates in November if there's a runoff. A lot of the more local seats, like your city government, those are on the primary. In addition, in a primary, let's say in Florida, it's a two-party system. Mm-hmm. So we don't have the opportunity to say we're just not going to be affiliated with a party, because it's what's called a closed primary. Mm-hmm. In order to vote in the primary election, you got to be registered at one of the parties. Right. So let's say if there's two Democrats in the particular race and you like one over the other, well, you need to be voting in the primary to ensure that one gets to the next level, which is the November race. Mm-hmm. And so people don't understand that that's where the most important seats are at that extra primary. Right. And also people need to know that the game changer is your local. You have more power with your local than even the president. So, for
Yep.
example, remember back when President Obama came in and he was trying to fix the economy and they sent funds down to the state. So, for example, the state of Florida didn't take the money for Medicaid expansion. They didn't take
Right.
some of the particular stimulus in the first place. So
That's
it
right.
didn't matter what the president did because the state stonewalled it and stopped it. And
Right.
so we need to understand that we have more power there. That's where the game changer is. This whole top down, where we start with the president there, none of that actually matters.
Right.
And I use the example, for example, Florida is 49th in education. If
Mm-hmm.
there are 50 states, and then we're looking at the president as it relates to education, how is it that Florida is 49th? Because it starts at the state level. I
That's
also
right.
want people to know that it doesn't stop with your vote. While that vote is powerful,
Yep.
if people are working for you, how you keeping up with what they're doing? Like me, I run companies. I have to check in and keep up with what my staff is doing. That's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing that we have to do with people that are elected in an office. We
Right.
don't just vote for them and say, okay, well, I'm going on and then be mad because they didn't did 10 things that you didn't keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
We also must be deliberate in ensuring that they do what they said that they were going to do. And so often we will show up to the polls and vote, but then the people that are elected need your help. They need our help with ideas. They need our
Mm-hmm.
help with organizing and collaboration. They need our
Yep.
help with building out programs.
Yep.
Even if they're trying to push a program on our behalf, in order to build the momentum, we got to be in the room. We got to
Yeah.
be at the table. Because if you're
Yep.
not on the table, you're on the menu. If you're
That's
not at the
right.
table, you're on the menu.
Yes, right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted, I know we're about to wrap up. I want to throw this up here about her. Where is it? Back there. Share. Ding. Her book. It's about to hit the anniversary. She just released your book last year. You talk
Yeah,
about
she.
that real quick.
Oh, I forgot all about that. I think too, I always forget about my book because the reason I wrote my book is because other people asked me to. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know how I got into advocacy. They wanted to know more about me and my story. So even when I went to my publishers and I was like, I need to write a book, and I said, but I don't know what for. I said the other people want the book, and so it
Right.
ended up being what it is. So it's written in my voice. It is very remnant of me. So yeah, I said it. I don't give a damn, and I'm very clear about that. But then even the actual acronym, we're talking about disparities, allegiances, mindsets, and N-words. These
Mm-hmm.
are things that I actually talk about and advocate for day to day. There actually is a change your damn mindset, which is an actual like a list of things that we need to do in order to
Uh-oh.
Yeah, she froze. So
live. There's
essentially,
an activist
let's just.
pledge.
Okay, there
Um,
she is. Go ahead,
yeah,
Shanae. I
many
was
people
just
that have read the
finishing
book.
your sentence. Go ahead.
I apologize, the call was coming in. Many of the people that have read the book state that it actually helped them in their day-to-day life. It helped them to look at things that were going on at work, helped them to look at life in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it's actually, so it's actually to help you in your day-to-day life, not just in activism or advocacy.
Right. Right.
All
Right.
right. All right. It's available. All right. It's right at 9 o'clock. So go ahead. Go ahead, Doctor.
Woo! We look. We went over, but I'm happy we did because it's so important. So I'm gonna just ask this last question to both of you, uh, Shanae and to Di. Di, if you could leave the audience with one idea, one thought, something that can help get them moving, something that would help them want to something that would encourage them to really get involved and get engaged, what would that one thing be? What is it that what would you do to just motivate people to just get going?
I tell people right now, you need to vote like you've never voted before
Mm-hmm.
because your life is like you're on a lifeline. I tell
Yeah.
people, I'm talking about this. Your lives are at stake. Your democracy, the
Mm-hmm.
right to vote. Just imagine if somebody takes away all your power. Well, you can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything. Can you imagine that? People say, "Oh, I never looked at it like that, Miss Diane." I said, these people are making rules to
Yes.
harm you. To
Yes.
harm you. This is what I've been telling people.
Yes.
Do you want somebody harming you, hurting you? But you know, those of us who are like-minded, we all got to be pushing the same message. I tell people all the time, I mean, my mind, these are words that do not rhyme, but we are sides together. These are words that last forever. Because it's not about you, but it's about us. But I'm telling you, if you don't vote like never before this time, we're in trouble. Because
in the primary,
August 23rd. And most of the people, I'm telling you, this housing crisis has scared people to death, because when you don't have a place to lay your head, that's something else.
Agree. And we're talking about the food crisis. We're talking about all kinds of things. I mean, it's all kinds of things
it's all kind of things. But I ain't telling people vote like you never, like somebody stole all these stuff.
That's right, because that's essentially what has happened and what's about to happen.
They're taking everything.
Taking it all.
Because if you don't, we are in trouble. Like you say on the little movie, trouble.
All right, Chanae.
I'm just going to pop up the comment.
I'm just going to say the time is now. If not you, then who? And then we need to start waiting on other people to take care of our business for us, because nobody is going to take care of our business like we are.
All right. I like it.
Amen.
All right. It's a lot of comments in here. Lots of comments. I know you guys can't see them all, but there are lots of comments coming through. Yep. Some Gainesville natives. We got people in Jacksonville, Gainesville, Tampa, Atlanta, all kinds of places. I mean, lots of places. I don't even know where some of these people are. I'm just yelling out some stuff, the ones that I do know. But listen, ladies, you two have been extremely informative, and I know for a fact that both of you are easily accessible, no matter, even in your office, Di, when you were sitting in your seat, and as you move back to your seat, notice I said your seat, because technically the governor did not have the authority to remove Diyonne when he made that move.
I got to interrupt. I have to hop off, y'all. Y'all have a good night.
All right, Chanae. See you later. Thank you, Chanae. All right. So the governor did not have the authority to remove Diyonne. The rule says that you have 10 days to protest or to protest an election result. 10 days. Diyonne was in her seat for 7 months. So that's way outside the 10 days. The other thing, though, is that she never vacated her seat. No. So the only way that the governor should be filling a seat is if she vacated a seat. She never vacated her seat. So for him to remove her and put somebody else in place, it doesn't align with the law. It does not align with the law at all. And Diyonne ran through this quickly earlier when she said, she was making history. That is the first time that there was a Black majority on the school board. The first time there was a Black majority on the school board. The other thing is it was a Black female majority. So you got to understand that was problematic. That was problematic. So when you start getting votes in the affirmative for things that are making a difference in our community and for our children, it becomes a problem. Yes. It becomes a problem. It became a problem. I don't even have to talk about it as though it's some far-fetched fairy tale and we're talking about unicorns and bouncing bunnies. That's not it. This is happening today. Yes. This is happening right now. This is current. And we're not talking about 1952 or 1941 and all. I'm talking about 2022. This is when this stuff is still happening. So if you do not think that it's important for you to jump in and start moving, it is. Yes. If you do not think it's time for you to jump out there and start doing something, it is. And there are lots of ways to advocate. You could be the one who just writes the letter. You could be the one that reads the letter. You can be the one that researches and finds the information. You can be the one, or be the forward-facing one and be the one that does the lives, or be the one that shows up at board meetings, or you can just sit at your house and make a phone call or two. Yeah. There are many ways to advocate. Many ways to advocate. The key is that you do something and you do it now. Yeah. If you do not, you got to have the courage to at least do something. Yes. Do something. And no matter how big or how small you think it may be, I will tell you, I know for a fact that there are candidates that are sitting in seats right now, and candidates who have won their positions, and candidates who are moving into seats, candidates that we know and that we're working with. These people have people in the background that's giving them that fuel and the energy that they need, because they don't have the time to do a lot of that front leg work, because they're in the trenches trying to get things done. So you could be that person that's just that's sitting there reading through things and saying, okay, this is ready to go. You could be the editor. You could be the one answering the phone. It's all kinds of things that you can do. But if you want to be a politician, you want to learn how to advocate, we got systems in place for that. Diyonne will mentor. Diyonne can, and Chanae, all y'all can stop talking to me, because I'm not running for nobody's office. I got a background. And I got a background. I can't run for office. We just dispel that truth. We just dispel that myth. So again,
your background got you prepared.
That's it. Uh-oh.
So I'm Di, I pray, just pray. So so Di, is there anything else that you'd like to tell the audience before they leave? Maybe about your campaign or anything? Where can they find you?
Well, you can find, first of all, thank you all for this opportunity. You can find me at votemcgraw.com. The 3 reasons why I'm running: to improve reading skills district-wide, to workforce development. Just because you're not going to college does not mean you cannot be successful, and transparency. And I'm a candidate who doesn't mind, and when I win, I don't mind being held accountable, because I'm about action. I'm not about talk. And so I want you to remember Diyonne McGraw for Alachua County School Board District 2. And I am committed to serve, and I have the courage to lead. So keep looking for me, because you'll see my little jingle I have. It's time for a change. Diyonne McGraw, she can do it.
Yes, all right.
This opportunity again, and just keep me in your prayers, and I look forward to serving the people of Alachua County.
Awesome, Diyonne. That's excellent. I can't wait, because we're gearing her up to get ready for her to hit this school board seat and then jump on up. She got a Senate race coming up. So we got some things we're working on.
One step at a time.
We're working on some things. I told her I want to move to Tallahassee. All right. So again, I am we have the power here. So thank you again, Joe. I will shut up.
Right. Amen. Again, we thank you for being on the show. All right. Be blessed.
Thank you.
All right.
Goodbye.
All right. I thank you all for joining the show. Hey, what did you learn today? What I learned today is get educated. Get involved, get registered, and go vote. The change start with you. All right, everybody, be blessed. Thank you for watching From the Mind of the Joe. I should be ready. Should have been ready.